according to you, he explained that the ECG owed. They had debts, and so they had to auction to pay.
No. Let me go over this again. I'm saying that ECG has excused their inability to clear the cargo for lack of money. All right? Then the question is, if you can't clear cargo and you have so much, why are you buying more? That is what my minister is saying. Then the next question is, they were hoping to have a switch, a swap of government indebtedness to ECG with their duties so that they can get
the money.
Yeah, those were the issues that were raised at the time. But it's also neither here nor there. The key thing here is that these are assets of the state. Why are they not accounted for? Two, why do we get to where we are? And the issues that Jinapo is raising is even more serious. I mean, no ratification by the board. Do we just have a budget? There are two ways in management, and I'm not going to now speak to ECG as a limited liability. In management, you go to your board for approval. The directing body of an entity is the board. They are ultimately responsible. The directors of the company are ultimately responsible. So, Minister, I'm hoping that this matter, we don't leave it hanging as a policy matter. The directors of ECG must be held responsible, everyone within that time. They are responsible for what has happened. If we can't account for it, they are responsible for what has happened. You know that contracts are going. What's the efficiency in it? The reason why I was saying that we can't blame this on the qualification of the procurement head is because these are fundamental things that you don't even need procurement expertise to be able to manage. If you are not a certified or a chartered procurement professional, it does not excuse you to make this kind of errors or these kinds of omissions. How do you give contracts when you don't have capacity?
Okay.
Two, how is it that you don't account for things? Even you, Minister, you are not a chartered procurement person. You wouldn't do what is being done. So that is the matter. People must learn to be responsible. Don't hide it. I didn't have the qualifications, so I couldn't do it. It's not that just common sense. It's more color matter.
Okay, but you see, there's another aspect of the report that, Mr. Jinapo, you touched on briefly. I'm looking at the page 1.4, summary of the key findings, excessive procurement. In 2022, I see single-sourced contracts 33. In 2023, that single-source contracts figure rises to 512. And I'm seeing the proposals and the opposition to more of these competitive methods that were found out. Now, that is because you say you started engaging and having people answer questions. What was the reasoning behind awarding such high numbers of single-source contracts within a particular year?
That is the question.
And that is where the procurement man says he was under pressure.
Under pressure from
so
where?
It means that from above. And the question is, and that's what Senor asked, who is the above? Who is that above who puts pressure on you to sign such outrageous contracts? You know, my brother, let's face it. Let's face it. What happened is condemnable. It's not good. It's not the best. It should never happen. And it shouldn't have happened. I mean, you can't award contracts 1 year, 33. The next year, 512. I mean, what has changed between 2022 and 2023 such that you have such a ballooning of contracts? And then, like Senor said, then you realize that you're unable to clear the containers. Instead of you to slow down, 2024 is getting worse. And you see, these things, there's always a lag. What will happen is that most of these things, you feel the effects in subsequent years. So this year, for instance, we are saddled with a debt of 80 billion cedis in the energy sector, arising directly from ECG. 80 billion, that is how much we need today to be able to satisfy IPPs, fuel producers, and suppliers. And every day, suppliers to ECG come to my office complaining that banks are threatening to sell their houses, Banks are chasing them, and they are struggling, and I'm helpless. Look, the money we get, we have to use it to pay IPPs. We have to use it to buy fuel. We have to use it to pay gas producers. And so virtually nothing is left for ECG to be able to pay these suppliers. And most of these suppliers are Ghanaian businessmen who've gone to the banks to raise loans. It means that you are going to have a high level of default. And then non-performing loans will go up. The banks will now be compelled to increase interest rates so that decent people like Afenyo and co who are going to look for money, they'll be paying higher interest rates, and it can lead to banks collapsing. So this that you might just stay down and think that it's just an ECG related affair. And that's why Senor said the finance ministry and all of us ought to be concerned. It can affect the fiscal, and that will impact everybody. And worst of all, these are equipment that we need to supply power to the people of Ghana. Now the equipment are being sold, they are being auctioned off, some are being stolen. And so it even affects the supply of power to everybody in this country. So those who are on social media and trying to get overly political, look, this affects all of us. And I think that one, we must stop that immediately. We must reform ECG. We must cut costs and make it more efficient. We must also hold people responsible for their actions and inactions. We must retrieve these containers wherever they are. Either we retrieve the goods or we retrieve the monetary value from those who are engaged in this activity. When we do that, we'll be making some progress as a country. And that is my focus. I'm very happy that President Mahama has given me all the assurance and all the support to do what is right and proper. This should have been done years ago. Be that as it may, let's take this opportunity and clean the system. Look, I get very worried every day when I look at the energy sector figures. I get very, very worried. We need 2.5 billion every month to satisfy all the value chain players. We get only 1.3 billion. So what it means is that every month we incur a loss of 1.2 billion. So by the end of the year, you can imagine the cost to the state. And then we have to then follow the Minister of Finance to use monies that we're supposed to use for health, education, infrastructure to pay for somebody's negligence or inefficiency. Something must stop, and somebody must stop this and begin to turn the curve.
So the reason why I stayed on you a bit earlier was because of your service on the advisory board of the energy sector. When this got to you, your notice in 2022, what did you do as an advisory board of the energy sector? What did you do?
I think we found it reasonable that the ministry intervenes and possibly considers the recommendations of ECG at the time. But I just left soon after, so I couldn't have done any more. But one of the things you just need to know, most of these cables are coming from China.
I see.
Now, these cables come from China. They end up in the hands of Chinese, who smells them and ship them back to China. Good morning, Ghana.
With all of this, because some of this borders on law, but a lot of it on procurement and corruption as well. ECG's position was that they were not subject to the public procurement laws. And for that matter, to the extent that there was some autonomy, they could do this without necessarily recourse to the Public Procurement Authority Act per se. The minister says that cannot be the case, but ECG went ahead to do it. So who should be held responsible for a position as taken by the company at the time, which led to they procuring these containers, even at the time when it was clear they didn't need that much?
Okay, so I see two aspects of the question. Procuring in excess of what they need, that's one side. And then the First part of the question is the ECG saying they are not subject to the procurement law. Okay, so on the matter of not being subject to the procurement law, what I'll say is that as you shared the AG's opinion with us, because it's the Attorney General's opinion, and you know the Attorney General is the #1 law enforcement agent and also the government's advisor. I will go with the minister that it should be shown to the new Attorney General. You see, like sometimes we say new king, new law. It's possible. Because, you see, so what I'm doing here is that having read the opinion as a lawyer, to be objective, I see the position they've taken. By giving the same facts, another lawyer will come to a different position. So I believe that it should be litigated thoroughly. So even if the Attorney General were to take the position that he will go with that's if Dr. Ayeni were to take the position that he will go with the previous Attorney General, for me, I even encourage litigation in court. Let's test it to the highest. Yes.
It's already gone to court.
The matter of this not subject.
Yes, it's already gone to court.
Is it the one that Fiamepo did? No.
I think, let's see. All right. I'll cite the case for you.
So we should litigate it thoroughly. Litigate it thoroughly. The one I've seen, they were saying that procurement breaches should be dealt with as criminal offenses. When you find it, let's go on with this. So the main point we're making is I see what the
Center for Democratic Empowerment versus ECG as defendants, Samodubik and then Kwame Jan Budu.
Okay, so it's still pending, or is that a judgment?
It's judgment.
I haven't seen it.
I mean,
and the court supports the.
I mean, Edu is familiar with it. You can speak to it.
Okay. So me, what I'm going with, all right, since I haven't seen it, what I'm going with is that obviously it looks to me like that's a high court decision. So it's not final. Because you see, what we should be very clear is that the fact that something is law doesn't mean that it's necessarily good. No. The law itself, you can measure its quality. What we are seeing is that, right, ECG has gotten a leeway to do things that are untoward. Yes. So we should be interested in curbing it. So for me, to the extent that that is a high court decision, it doesn't close the matter. Okay. I support the minister that he should take it up with the Attorney General as step one, and then let us know publicly what the Attorney General's opinion is on it. So that if the Attorney General, as I said, it's possible he can agree with the previous one or depart. And then looking also at the high court decision. Bottom line is that because we are losing a lot of money, and because the high court decision is not final, we have Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, I believe that we should test by going further until we've exhausted all the legal avenues, until finally the Supreme Court is also looked at it, and then we would know. Then, you see, by the time the Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court eventually gets a bite at it, then we know that, okay, these are the law lords. As a society, we've put them at the top, right? And you know, the Supreme Court also does a lot of policies. Not everything that you see in the black letter of the law, yet they can do policy and add, right?
The policy court, actually.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So let's litigate it to the fullest. Okay. Litigate it to the fullest. Then we would know. Yes, then we would know what to do. Because we
don't need to wait for that. Government today has policy capacity through SIGA, to the ministries, to set procurement directives controlling every limited liability company. Now, this is what we expect of you. So all directors should implement this.
Perfect.
You know, you don't need to wait for the law to be on. Say, look, the Constitution, these are some of the problems I have. Duties of a citizen under the directive principles of state policy. I beg this one have to say that. I beg you, please, it's very important.
Yes.
Look, the exercise and enjoyment of rights and freedoms is inseparable from the performance of duties and obligations, and accordingly, it shall be the duty of every citizen to protect and preserve public property and expose and combat misuse and waste of public funds and property. So when you are appointed as an agent of the state in a limited liability company, fundamentally, as a citizen of the country, you have a responsibility to protect. You understand? So you can't say because the law has given you this way, so you can do it. No. I have
it still comes back to the point that you're talking about the quality of the law.
Yes.
Because
so when the quality is bad, challenge it. Challenge it. That's how come some laws are struck down. So let's pursue it that AG, Then from there, we look at how to go back into the court so that we get a final decision. Because otherwise, then we will be leaking all the time. We'll be leaking all the time.
In the name of law.
Yes, exactly. And I like the examples people have been giving that narcissism happened, right, under law. The Holocaust. Yes, people use law to do it. Hitler and his people. Other bad things happen also under the guise of law. So let's not make the argument that once it's law, then it's kosher. No. Sometimes you have bad laws. We have bad laws. So let's go on with it. So the second part, I think Senyo has answered, the one about over procurement. So as from what we are saying, until the strict legal side is dealt with, we can use the soft side, that's to say SIGA, putting ECG into line. Yes, by saying we will not allow this. But for what has already happened, the over procurement, the matter of going over 7 billion in 2023. So question is, are we going to allow this to go? No. So I support the call that, well, with the report that has been done, they should look at how to escalate it, give it to the Attorney General, so that the management of ECG at the time, we should investigate to see how we can hold them accountable. Yes, we should see how we can hold them accountable.
Okay.
Don't forget Atuesian. So you remember, let's make this point so that people see. Remember when the Atuesian matter started? People said there were arguments that the liquidity support, all right, was given to this in the bank, right? That Capital Bank, as a limited liability company. So if you've lent a limited liability company money, do you have the right to determine how to use it, etc.? Eventually, it didn't fly in court. So this argument that, ECG is limited liability, so the Public Procurement Act should not apply, I am not in favor of it until it's been litigated fully. Yes. So let's remember there are two ACN cases. You remember that time? People say, no. Capital Bank is a limited liability company. So if you lend government money to it, once the company is taking it, look, their only duty is to pay back. What they do with the money is nobody's business, etc. But today, is ACN not supposed to be in Sawam, right? Yeah, he's been convicted and then jailed. So let's use the fora for litigation to see. Of course, starting with the Attorney General first.
Indeed, that matter of accountability is a big...
Get there. There is the need to clarify something, and my sector minister has done that brilliantly. For the past week, the impression has been created that these containers got missing the moment the NDC came to power. And strangely, I saw the MPP social media team create containers with wings flying. And the whole reason was to engage in political equalization, because if you recall, when the MPP came to power, Aboboya trucks that were purchased with state, money suddenly got missing under their watch. So when this issue of the missing containers came up, they felt that, finally, we've gotten something on the new NDC administration. And so they went overdrive on social media with containers with wings flying all the... So again...
Politics is not serious at all.
on a platform, the Honorable Minister actually assured that these containers never got missing when he became minister. And therefore, he was going to ensure thorough investigation into the matter. Lo and behold, we woke up to see the National Security Council Secretariat and their investigators uncovering the nefarious activities of the Chinese, where we have seen about 15 Chinese nationals basically taking up these containers. But what I want to find out is that these containers are usually either in the custody of Ghana Ports and Harbour Authority. And so I want to find out. And GRA, because of the duties involved, they are under the close watch of these entities. So how in God's name did these containers just get missing? I've been thinking of, and you see, container is not something you can put in your bag.
Okay.
You understand? 40-footer container, you can't even wrap it in anything. And this is something that cannot move unless you put it on another car.
Or you give it away.
So this was a matter, and I thank Minister so much for putting this matter to rest. That this missing container did not happen under his watch. Very, very important piece of information because it kills that propaganda ab initio. Now, on the issue of the procurement, you see, you remember the famous ECG criminal trial? So, in 2009, when the NDC came to power under Professor Mills, then the issue of this rice importation by NIB came up.
Yeah,
Daniel Jima.
Yes.
So Daniel Jima and Oseji were then prosecuted by the then NDC administration. Okay. They went to court, and one of the charges was that at the time they awarded the contract for the rice importation, they did not get the necessary approval from the PPA. Okay? So when it happened that way, the trial judge in this matter asked them to open their defense because prima facie there was evidence that they never got the approval of the PPA. So the matter went to the Court of Appeal, and I had to bring in this because of So the matter went to the Court of Appeal. I think Quorum Justice Justice Apau. Okay. He wrote the lead judgment. And in the lead judgment of His Lordship Justice Yao Apau, he said, look, if you look at Section 15 of the PPA Act, it provides scope of applicability. And that the NIB, even though it is 100% owned by government of Ghana, you understand? By government of Ghana, it is not subject to the PPA Act. And that is how come Daniel Jima and Oseji were acquitted at the Court of Appeal, even though, you see, so what happened was that after the prosecution closed its case, they did a submission of no case.
Right.
Then the High Court judge said, no, you have a case to answer. Then they appealed the decision of the High Court calling on them to open their defense to the Court of Appeal. In the ruling of the Court of Appeal took the view that even though NIB is 100% shared by government of Ghana,